New Generation Leader.
Welcome to the New Generation Leader podcast. We're giving you the tools you need to lead in the digital world. Ready to reach your true potential? This is the New Generation Leader podcast.
So guys, we've been talking about human intelligence today. There's something about this new age, this new phase of living. So Steve, I'm going to come to you first. As a coach and consultant in this digital age, in the digital world, what are you seeing that's different than the rest of your career, which has been in technology, a field full of innovation for a long time? What are you seeing that's different, and how are you approaching that in this new era?
Yeah, so it's an incredible amount of change. We started out, many of us in this room were born in what I've heard referred to as the Gutenberg era. It was highly influenced by the printed media. The digital age has really been coming to light in the past few years, but it started, a few decades ago. Especially in the past 2 to 3 years, it has accelerated immensely. And we really do live in a completely different culture than many of us were born into. But we didn't get the pleasure of traveling to that new culture. We just here we are. So it's learning how to relate. I like to say we've redefined our place, we've redefined our relationships, and we've redefined time. So our place, we are together with thousands of people globally today at this conference. Our time, we can record anything and watch it later. A lot of things are on demand. So we can kind of shift that time and redo our schedules. But the connectedness that we are experiencing has moved from a relational connectedness to more of a networking connectedness. And so the human intelligence aspect a lot of times becomes more accidental than it has been in the past. So as we move deeper into the digital age, and we really have just really barely scratched the surface of the beginning of the digital age. And moving forward, our human intelligence is going to be more and more important.
As you look back at the Gutenberg era, the Industrial Revolution, even thinking about time periods of generations, we've had these standard amounts of time. Those periods were 200 years. A generation is about 18 years. But you look at a chart that shows the rapid adoption of ChatGPT compared to other technologies, and you see how much faster things are changing and being adopted. And I heard this once. You go back to, anybody remember, or anybody still have a floppy disk around that you're using? Probably not.
It's a coaster.
I was just going to say, I was shooting at them recently.
So if you plot the size of the floppy disk, and now up to, I just ordered a 2 terabyte hard drive as an extra hard drive for my computer. If you plot that, how much data we can store, it's scary how much data is out there. And I think that's important for us to recognize and realize. Pay attention, like you said, to the human side of what's changing around us, outside of us, but look back in the mirror and realize, hey, what's moving away from the way things have been? So what would you say to people to encourage them to tap into that human side?
First, think about it as concentric circles, right? Where yourself is in the center, and then as it goes out, you got yourself, your family, your team, your organization, and your community. To be a leader today and really connect with people, it starts with knowing yourself before you can lead yourself. Because if you don't possess a knowledge of being able to lead yourself, you really can't lead others. And that's what it's really going to take in the digital age, is that intentional working on yourself. And being here today is is a huge part of that, right? Because you're working on yourself, you're investing in yourself. But working on yourself, knowing what your tendencies are that lead to your actions, that result in your consequences in your life, good or bad. Because one of the things about the AI that is out there, and this is scary, you're scrolling through your phone, you're on social media, all of a sudden an ad pops up for something. The technology out there really almost knows your tendencies as good or better than you do. So if you're not intentional about continuing to learn about yourself and knowing what those tendencies are, and then proactively writing your story for the future, then you're going to be a product of the digital age instead of being a leader in the digital age.
I heard Coach Kevin Eastman yesterday morning. Many of you here from Richmond know Kevin. If you follow the NBA, you know Kevin. If you don't follow Kevin or the NBA, perhaps you've heard of some of the players he's coached, like Kobe Bryant, Kevin Durant. And he said something yesterday that I wrote down. He said, being intentional is what you do on purpose to fulfill your purpose. And I think that's a great reminder. So often we don't look at ourselves and what we can do for ourselves because we think it's selfish. So we don't take care of ourselves because we're so busy taking care of everybody else. But it's really important that we are healthy, not to a selfish level, but healthy so that we have something to give to other people. So Bryan, this is truly a chaotic period. Rapid change happening all around us. And you go back to the 20s, the 30s, the 50s of the 1900s, when people thought it was changing a lot then. It's changing even more now. And your business brand name is Harvesting Chaos. So how are you meeting people in those places of chaos and helping them find clarity?
It may be important to explain how I came about that name, too. I was in the investment advisory practice for about 30 years, and if you manage other people's money or do anything with the market, you do understand chaos, because that's pretty much what happens. I sold that practice about 5 years ago, and so watching everything happen with markets these days it no longer affects my sleep like it used to. Coming through that and dealing with clients and dealing with business owners as markets rose and fell, sometimes understandably, most times there seemed to be no reason that was understandable for folks. But getting people to walk through avoiding panic in those situations was always important. For me, 5 years ago, before I realized I was ready to sell my practice and move into something else, I went through a medical issue which was extremely chaotic for about a 65-day period, which the beginning of that was finding out one day that you had 60 days to live when all you thought you had was a bad stomachache. And you get diagnosed that day with end-stage liver and kidney failure. And you get told by your doctor that, barring a miracle, you've got about 60 days left. Now, that triggers chaotic thoughts in your brain. So, and for a minute, I froze. It's what business leaders at times do. When bad news hits them in markets, if interest rates go nuts, it can impact everything. Over the last couple of years, we had people paying, $100,000 above asking price for houses in the race, and buyers panicking over what to do. And I'm not going to say they made bad decisions, but they made decisions oftentimes driven by, if I don't make this deal, it's going to go away, rather than it's just the financially right thing for me to do. I'm not knocking people doing any of that, but they were just faced with those decisions to have to make. Business owners every day, whether it's the employment situation, whether it's turnover with employees, or just an inability to fill positions, or just the fact that you can't manage or treat employees the same way they may have been managed 40 or 50 years ago, when folks worked because they had to, because they needed the paycheck, and so whatever the demand was from the boss, they would do it to keep the job. And nowadays, in most fields, people have options. They don't like the way you treat them, they'll go somewhere else. So how do you face the chaos in that as well? So what we do, and what attracted me a few years ago to become certified through Giant, was the tools that they make available to allow me to use simple pictures and simple concepts of things that I've been working with for 30 years, managing client expectations and small business owners, day-to-day emotional roller coasters, with these simple tools like this Know Yourself to Lead Yourself tool, or your Peace Index. So what we focus on with people is getting them to become fully self-aware, but also understand how to manage their inner peace. So when faced with chaos, they know the steps to step back, take a deep breath. I mean, literally, remember to do the first thing you did when you were born, which was breathe, which sounds so simple, but can be awfully tough to do at times when you're faced with panic and can't immediately see the answer or the solution. And if you try to act without taking that deep breath, you can make a mistake. And a lot of times when you make that first mistake, it's followed up by a second mistake. And then that downward spiral comes, and it just gets worse if you don't have someone there or some tool to grab onto to help you just take a pause. So that's how I work with clients to do that. And I mean, the Giant tools are great because they do this. They're not complicated. It's very, very simple pictures that just allow somebody to go, okay, took a deep breath, I'm good, I can handle this, I know where to turn.
Yeah, going back to the basics is so helpful. There are things that either we learned, or maybe we didn't learn, or we should have learned. And going back to some of those basics, having a simple picture or illustration that we can bring to mind helps make it so simple. And helps make it, I saw this comment just this morning from another coach, another Giant in the country. He said, I got this feedback from a team leader today who said, I just heard this tool referenced in everyday conversation 5 times just today around the office. And that's when you know the simple language has become part of the everyday vocabulary. We'll link to those tools and images in the show notes at newgenerationleader.fm so everybody can download those. Jerry, one of the things when we talk about as Giant as a whole is the vision to see every sector in every major city in the world liberated is our work, bringing out the highest possible good. Our focus is here in Richmond. So how have you seen that in different sectors you've been working in? How have you seen liberation come to life for those leaders?
Well, the first thing I'd say is liberation transcends all industries. Leadership transcends all industries. We've got a number of industries represented here today, not only on the panel, but also in the audience. And that's what I found is that when we speak the language of leadership, we speak the language that everyone wants to learn, everyone wants to know, and everyone wants to work for and be led by a leader worth following. So when we talk about the Giant tools and how applicable they are, they really do transcend any industry. For example, I have a background in healthcare. I used to run small hospitals. I own a small construction company now that I don't operate. But those tools are effective in both of those scenarios. So I tend to hang out in those areas. And what I found is that when you become a leader worth following, it doesn't matter if you're an introvert or an extrovert. It doesn't matter if you are detail-oriented or not. You're somebody that can lead others. And so that's really what I've seen in all areas with the language of leadership, is that we're liberating people that, hey, well, I'm just not an extrovert, so I can't do whatever. Believe it or not, I'm an introvert, and I had to take a deep breath before coming up here because I was eating my salad thinking that I have salad in my teeth before I sat down. So Bryan says, take a deep breath. I'm like, yeah, that's right, I gotta breathe, right? So that's what we do. We help leaders stop in the middle of that chaos, just like Bryan described. Take that deep breath and say, okay, what's the right decision? I don't know that AI can do that, quite frankly. Like you think about healthcare, for example. Can AI see that the patient has what we call a flat effect? A flat effect is a sure sign of the patient's declining, probably quickly. An experienced nurse, just like Andy Stanley said, can pick up on that. And how much experience goes into building a building or doing construction that AI probably won't be able to pick up on. So those are the questions I like to ask when I'm hearing about those things, but also looking at how transcendent the language of leadership is across all those industries. It's people leadership, and I think that's the future.
So let's dive a little bit deeper into healthcare. A scenario that has been part of lawsuits is the tension between healthcare providers being uncertain as to whether they can speak up and speak out about a patient's care and needs. Jerry, how do you see that with leaders? Because it's not just a nursing dynamic, it's a people dynamic. And we see it in every sector. But how would you encourage team leaders to make sure they're hearing from everybody on their team?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's a big topic. I was just speaking with someone back there about that at our table, about what we call creating emotional safety. And even as the administrator of the hospital, so the buck essentially stops with me. I still didn't have emotional safety because I wasn't sure who would react to what I said in all cases. So even me being the administrator, I still didn't have the emotional safety to always speak up. So how many people are sitting at that same table having that same challenge? Well, if we implement a language of leadership and understand everybody's strengths, their tendencies, we really start to build relationships around that trust. And trust is the key. So if that certified nurse's aide or nurse is kind of a quiet personality, but they feel empowered, now they're going to speak up when they do see that flat effect on that patient or if that patient's declining. Whereas before they might not have spoke up because maybe their manager's a little more of a loud voice, as we say. So the louder voices then will kind of subordinate themselves a little bit to the quieter ones and ask for that input. And when we can create that liberation, we say, inside the healthcare, think how many patients' lives we can save and how many problems we can mitigate.
You know, what's interesting is you highlight liberation. This was something else I was thinking about this week. Kevin Eastman talked yesterday about truth and the power of truth. And I think truth and AI, and as we talk about it, challenge, are kind of synonymous. Support is something, the encouragement, motivation that we can give alongside that clarity and that truth. That's what gets us to liberation. That's what helps us have the human intelligence to overcome AI and truly bring something unique to the table. All right, Steve, I'm going to come back to you, and then we're going to go down the line. I'm going to ask you the question that Andy asked all of us this morning, and then we asked this crowd to talk about at our first break. What are you hoping to feel as you walk away from today?
I'm hoping to feel that there is hope for tomorrow. You listen to, presentation from Dr. Dirks about AI. That can be scary. It can be extremely scary. And I think rightfully so. But hope to know that as humans, we still are in control. And by identifying what we can control, we can be intentional. And so just having that hope to know that, it's going to all work out. I mean, be intentional and don't be accidental.
Hope is a good word. There's a tool for that.
There's a tool for that.
So I've been thinking about this since we heard that question this morning. And I don't know how this is going to sound, but I think the word is accomplished. And what I mean by that is that we will have accomplished bringing this to a group of people with intention. We didn't know we had this opportunity until late in December of doing this. Some of you, a lot of you, all of you have heard us mention the 5 voices today. My foundational voice is a pioneer, so I don't like to wait for stuff. So I was waiting around to see if anybody else was going to pick up this license because I wanted to bring it. I wanted to bring it to a crowd that I want to help. So I basically called these guys on the 28th of December and said, "You guys aren't going to buy the license. I'm going to do it, but you got to come on and help me bring this." So going through that really, really rapid 4-month period, which doesn't sound rapid until you're trying to put an event together like this, I think accomplished and ready to sleep through the night. But I'm excited that all of you are here, and I hope you've enjoyed it. And if you have, then you can help me feel accomplished. So.
You can help him by clapping. First, I'll say Bryan did an excellent job and did probably the lion's share of the work. So the word that comes to mind for me, and it goes along with what Andy Stanley said, and the reason why is my wife and I are facing a couple of pretty strong decisions. Like, she's considering changing her job and has asked for my input on that, which is actually kind of a miracle because, she's usually the stronger personality. But trust comes to mind. And so she's getting these intuitive, it's what we call intuition, kind of signals about whether it's right or wrong. And so I hope to feel trust walking out of here. Trust in not just the people around me, but my own intuition.
That's great. Well, I think my hope is, and if the noise and the chatter around your table was any indication as we started this recording and this conversation, is the fact that you have hopefully made a connection with somebody else. I think my hope is that we all have a connection to know that we're not in this alone. No matter where you are, no matter what you do, if you came here by yourself from your company, you know now that there are other people in the region who you can connect with, who you can link up with, and follow up on these conversations about human intelligence, about leadership, about bringing your best in whatever industry that you're in. Leadercast has been going on in Richmond for quite some time. A couple folks in here were part of the earliest days. I was part of the last hosting of Leadercast 4 years ago. And at that point in time, I was the only person using Giant in Central Virginia. And so part of Together for me is getting to do this together with all of the Giant coaches who are here now. We're up to 20, I think, across the Commonwealth, and half of that's here in Central Virginia. So the power of Together is strong, it's exciting, and it means that we can. I always say we can do more together than we could ever do on our own. As a pioneer like Bryan, I spent a long time in my life trying to do it alone, but it's much better together. So that's my encouragement to each of you the rest of this afternoon as you connect around the table. Make sure you get to know those names, schedule a follow-up, and make sure you put some of these insights into practice. Well, that's our conversation. We've got to get back to Leadercast Live, but thanks for listening to this episode of the New Generation Leader Podcast. You download the show notes, get all these tools that these guys mentioned, and we'll link to their LinkedIns and websites as well on newgenerationleader.fm.
Thanks for listening to the New Generation Leader Podcast. Subscribe today on your favorite podcasting platform. Ready to solve your leadership crisis? Download the show notes and unlock your true leadership potential at newgenerationleader.com/podcast. Thanks for listening today, and we look forward to seeing you next time on the New Generation Leader Podcast.